So that's it for me. I'm going to take a real quick look at some of the uh, questions that were shot to me. I note that I tend to take a pretty aggressive view of some of the commission's decisions over time. Some of these things that I've discussed today may be things that ultimately are clarified or changed by the commission as it goes along. Remember, this public notice just came out recently, and there's some areas that some folks might consider a bit vague. I will also tell you that there have been a couple of appeals filed with the U.S. Court of Appeals of the commission's decision, and therefore we might go through this whole thing again with another change and another decision. What is different this time than perhaps other times with regard to your typical court appeal is that now we have the elimination by the Supreme Court of what was traditionally known as the Chevron criteria, the Chevron standard, whereby the court gives deference to the opinion of the expert agency, in this case, the FCC. That is no longer a standard. So at this point, a court of appeals could readily impose its own thoughts about what interference is or anything else that appears in this report and order and send it back to the commission for a further rulemaking consistent with the court's opinion. So what we won't see, in answer to one of the folks who wrote here, the order provides we won't have new microwave links as it currently stands, or future use of temporary fixed applications. I'm going to suggest that might be some wiggle room in what's eventually adopted between the band manager and FirstNet eventually. So somebody disagrees, one of my good friends disagrees with me on the vagueness of service area. He thinks that the order makes clear that a service area is defined by the technical parameters of the existing operations. I'm going to disagree with that. A service area is whatever I say it is. And until the FCC says definitively otherwise, it's what I say it is. Sorry, I'm going to take the position that is best for my clients. And until they say it's your line of sight between two microwave sites, or it's defined by a certain level of contour, until they are very specific about that, I'm going to take the position that if you have a microwave link from this site to over there, from Tacoma, Washington to Seattle, I know that's much too far, Tim. I'm going to say that my service area is in Tacoma, Washington. I'm going to define it the way I want until such time as the commission says no. They haven't said no. Somebody asked, what's the basis for saying AT&T slowdown? Won't necessarily be the one to use the spectrum shared with FirstNet. Do you think there's a reason to believe they will solicit a new contract? Well, in my opinion is they will have to solicit a new contract. Excuse me one second. Because although we're not allowed to see the existing FirstNet AT&T contract, I doubt, it could be wrong, it happened once before, I doubt that it discusses build-out requirements, etc., in a band other than the existing D block. So I think there will have to be a new contract, and that should be pursuant to a new solicitation. Whether that realistically gets bid upon or has parameters that makes it unappealing to potential other bidders, I don't know. Somebody said the order makes clear no new operations are allowed and only existing operations are protected from interference. What's the definition of a new operation? It's whatever I say it is until they tell me no. So that's my position. The idea is to integrate 4.9 into the PSBN. Another person says it seems highly unlikely FirstNet would choose anyone else than AT&T. It's up to the public safety community to lobby those FirstNet people, and if they want to see a different result. Remember, the band is for public safety eligible licensees. So I think that's a TBA in my opinion.
Alan,
Any
thanks
other
for
questions?
responding.
Yeah.
Let me respond to, you skipped one here. Given the pending appeal and loss of geographic licenses.
I skipped that on purpose.
Yeah. Will AASHTO file such a request? Lynn and I will take that up with AASHTO pending further discussion, I think, with others. That's a big ask right there, but one would merit though. I think there's already been discussions about that, saying, you know, what can we do? What can the incumbents do? So I'm sorry if you're not licensed already, but this is really for the incumbents. And what can we do to preserve our existing licenses? We need to do, to the extent possible, what we can. And I think there'll be some further discussion on that. And but it does have merit. And we'll work with AASHTO, Lynn and I, and others. So, Lynn, did you have had anything to that? Sorry, Alan. Lynn?
No, I was just going to say, we also, Michael Henderson probably will be a good one to answer the Michael Alferbach's question. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Lynn.
You guys are answering perfect for Ferdinand. I second what you said.
Okay.
And I'd just like to add to kind of that first question on the additional licensing, like what's going on in the state of Washington. So we have a statewide geographical license, which gives us the ability to operate 4.9 in the entire state of Washington. So we, as the 8th was being developed, and in between the 8th and this new PN that we got on December 9th, we had already had designs and funding set aside, equipment purchased for additional locations. So we are going to continue to deploy those, since they were already planned and designed and funded prior to any of this additional stuff that came out from the FCC. So we're going to continue on, and obviously at some point we're not going to be able to do that anymore. Right now it's June 9th, but we're going to continue on with our use of the band as we had planned.
And we're planning the same thing in California. Also, we're not stopping any implementation until such time as we'll be told no. So yeah, I think Tim, good advice there. Let's continue. There was Michael, did you want to add anything to the licensing part, the PF versus PA for point to multipoint?
Yeah, just to jump really quick. Again, obviously there's a plethora of systems that you've heard here just over the team. But the interesting part, as Alan stated, is the further proceedings that will come down the line. Now, coordination, it's going to be interesting to see what is defined. Is it going to be a massage? Is it going to be a synergy to what is current, to Part 101 TSB 10F type scenario? Because microwave links are protected under that currently for 2 gig through 6 gig all the way up to the millimeter band. So we have to consider and understand where that's going to go, and make sure you pay attention, because that's going to impact people in one direction or another. From an engineering point of view, interference, again, the incumbents, we really have to keep an eye on that. Everybody has to be cognizant of what's going on around them and be aware through communications. Transparency is large. But who's going to define it, and who's going to provide a resolution for such? As we know, under our current infrastructure that's protecting enforcement of such, they are buried deep and quite busy. So to add on to this, is it going to be a synergy of two, or is it going to be an individual entity providing such? But again, to make sure everybody gets in the information that is required by June 9th. Let's make sure that you get in front of it. Don't get behind it. So from an engineering point of view, that's what I have to state for today.
And Mike, there was a question about whether anybody has tried to do new licensing in the system since December 9th. I don't know if you've done that on behalf of any of your clients.
I have not. I've asked, and it's only under the most urgent and emergency situations is what I was told, but I have not done any on our side at all.
And Alan, as you know, I do all my licensing. I have not done a PF license yet. So we're planning that. I'm delaying a little bit because they haven't made the decision on which rules we're going to be under yet. And I'm afraid that we're going to do all this work and we're going to have to turn around and do it again. So we're going to wait a little bit and give it some time to hopefully someone will make a decision on which set of rules we're going to use, 90 or 101, so that they know exactly what we need to put in there.
Also, a question was...
Sorry, Alan, and that's the problem right there. You hit it on the nose there, Tim. You know, are we going to license Part 9 and 101? I vote, 49's microwave. If it's point-to-point, let's do 101. I mean, if it's point-to-multipoint or PB or base station, let's do Part 90. But again, the FCC hasn't ruled anything yet. And to me, it has to be a combination or people are going to be on top of each other.
I think what he's talking about is putting in the specific site licenses to take the place of the geographic license as required by the public notice. So I don't think anybody's done that yet, right? Okay.
No, I have a geographical license plus every single one of my 400 locations is also on a PA license for site-based. So I got to take all those and convert them to either PB or PF depending on the criteria. So I have not done that change yet.
And of course, ULS is the friendliest system ever created by cavemen.
It is.
There was a question about whether the FirstNet AT&T contract could just be modified to take into account the new band. Interestingly, I think it was asked by a person who might have actually read the contract. Since it's not available for us to read, I can't answer that from a legal perspective. Perhaps I would consider that to be a really bad decision on the part of the FirstNet board, but I guess it might be possible.
Let me ask this, Alan, though, maybe reading into this too much, but so right now, people are assuming FirstNet is going to turn it over to AT&T, but as you mentioned earlier, FirstNet is able to enter into lease agreement with other entities than AT&T. So perhaps there is a chance other entities could also use 4.9 in those cases where FirstNet might deem beneficial to public safety, because AT&T, it's always good not to put your eggs in one basket, I guess. So
well, all of this is subject to the contract that the band manager negotiates with FirstNet. So the real question is, this is why it's crucial that whoever the band manager is selected very carefully. It has to be somebody or some entity that not only knows how you all use the systems, but also has experience in managing contracts. It's got to be a whole solution here. And these are going to be hard-fought issues with FirstNet and the eventual entity, or as you point out, Ferdinand, maybe entities plural. And what is the time period by which that entity must deploy. If it's been 5 years since they've had that agreement and they're still not built out in New Hampshire, as a public safety user in New Hampshire, can I go in and do something there because they've forfeited, in my opinion, any right to use that spectrum because they're sitting on it? Now, will that ultimately happen? Probably not. They'll just throw up another repeater and put it into the rest of their commercial system. But who knows? Maybe. Band manager's got to be really a capable entity.
Or what I'm also hoping is that if we've been all clamoring for coverage in rural areas. So if an entity is not willing to put up communication in rural area, and if there's somebody else who really is raising their hand, perhaps the band manager of FirstNet can enter into that agreement with those specific people. I mean, that's what I'm hoping here, if for the best of it, right? I mean, in California, we need more rural area communication rural areas. That's not happening. Along our Highway 1 coastal, we can't build anything because of the coastal commercial rules. Well, if somebody raises their hand to FirstNet, I would hope in the band, I'll put something in there. Maybe that'll take priority over other things. I'm just hoping, maybe thinking out loud, but since it's really unknown, hopefully that'll materialize.
Tim's now going to tell us about. Yeah, go ahead. You're going to tell us about all the areas that you have no commercial coverage.
Well, yeah, I have a lot of them, but also, and that's where I'm using a lot of our 4.9 equipment, is because there is no commercial. But, to what was in the report and order as far as available bandwidth for whoever it is it's going to be, that FirstNet is going to be allowed to use or to contract out to another entity. Well, there are certain areas in the state of Washington and in Utah, there is no bandwidth available because we've used it all. So I'm hoping that as others are starting to do their PF and PB licenses in states that are operating 4.9 and they get a better picture, maybe 4.9 isn't going to be lucrative enough for anyone to use it. And it just gets defaulted back to public safety and we continue to use it the way we are. I don't know. Maybe I'm just wishing too much.
And let me ask this too, Tim and Lynn and maybe Alan, but FirstNet has a liaison for each state. I don't know if it's worthwhile to make sure who your FirstNet liaison is, and make sure you stay in touch, start a dialogue with them if you have not already, just to make sure that if something happens, or the decisions being made, maybe your voice, you can provide input. Please do so. Tim or Lynn, did you want to add anything to that? I know you guys are pros at FirstNet, but I just want to suggest that. Your thoughts?
I think your suggestion to know who your FirstNet liaison is good advice. It's everyone. You should keep that. I mean, we work with FirstNet quite a bit. What we're proposing is different from FirstNet, but we don't want to see FirstNet go away on what we're doing. So yeah, but I don't want them intruding on what we're doing either.
And FirstNet's very aware of our use and the how critical it is to our operation, especially on our mountain passes and our floating bridges. So they're in our SIEC meetings. So they hear me talk about this all the time on how important it is to the citizens of the state of Washington.
And curiously enough, I was at a FirstNet Public Safety Advisory Committee 2 weeks ago, and no mention about 4.9. And previous meeting to that, FirstNet anticipated some lawsuits, and they were saying they're probably not able to move forward for any near future, maybe 6 to 9 months. So, but this is before this 8th report order. So, I guess just make sure you're in contact and make sure that you have an opportunity or an avenue for your feedback and your voice to be heard, so that when at times comes time for decisions, your needs are also considered. That's the best extent we can do at this time, I think. So
yeah, I think it's going to be really important that the people with the band manager are very smart about the parameters under which they enter into the agreement with FirstNet. There's going to be that's going to be really critical.
And whoever the band vendor ends up being, the situation will be they will have to be one heck of a good SME on many levels, to not include, as Alan said, contracts, but you're looking to the individual public safety entities for each state, and then to understand how to set up the coordination practices for such, how to follow, and how to mitigate and define the interference resolutions. I mean, there's a lot that has to be done, an enormous amount.
So the lawyer's full employment plan.
Exactly.
Okay, we're 5 minutes over. I don't see any more questions. Let me check one more time. If anyone wants to discuss mechanics of petition, please reach out to Joe Manny at Cersei. Okay. Thank you for that, Roger. Okay, well, I in closing, thank you to our speakers, Tim, Lynn, Alan, and Andy, Adam, and Nick, and Noko for hosting this webinar, and thank you to all of you who have joined us. If I can be as bold to plug our AASHTO Communications Technology working group that Lynn and I co-chair. We meet bi-monthly, and really I invite you to join us. I'm sure we'll be discussing 4.9. FCC just made a ruling on 5.9. We'll discuss that too. Most states are implementing broadband networks. We discussed fiber. Lynn here is our fiber SME. And of course, we won't forget about the dinosaur that Michael and I talk about, land mobile radio, good old land mobile radio. So you can reach out to me or Lynn for more information about our working group and our meeting schedule. Also, Transportation's Research Board has a project NCHRP 23-28 that is to provide guidance on 4.9. And we hope to be completing that project sometime in the summer of next year. So be looking out for that. We will share that with Adam and Nick and Noko, and they can distribute that information of that report as it's published. So I think that's all I have. Adam, did you want to say the last remarks, Adam?
Just thank you to all of you for presenting. This was extremely informative, and thank you to everybody who participated and engaged on the topic. We appreciate you. We'll follow up with some of the links and the recording, and there'll be a brief survey when we close out the webinar here. I did put links in the chat box there at the end to the radio frequency group and to the NCHRP project. Thank you again. We'll get a recording up soon, and everybody will get notified once that's available to share with your colleagues. And again, appreciate everybody for speaking. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.